Someone got it.
Yeah. Hi,
Jeff.
Jeff. Hi there.
Jeff.
Need a parking pass?
Getting backwards.
No, I'm good, right? I'm good.
Start all over.
Thank you. How far for there's no. meter.
Good evening and welcome to the LMC TV Board of Control meeting for July 12th, 2022. I need a motion, please open this meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Franchise agreement with BBK, franchise negotiation agreement with BBK. This is a law firm, the village, not the village, I'm sorry. The board vetted a couple of law firms to help us with franchise renegotiation. And we picked Best and Krieger, attorneys at law. They were associated with a gentleman who has been involved with LMC TV pretty much since its inception, Mr. Joe Van Eaton. And
Yep.
Yes.
So we have a new agreement. I told you I'll find email, but
Like a week after we so close.
I'm really sorry to that. I like Joe with it.
Yep.
I'm sorry, I thought.
No, there must have been an email that I missed. Well, rest in peace, Mr. Bain. was the next man. This is his successor firm, I guess. I have a chance to peruse it.
Okay, so, I meant to reach out to you, but Bill Maker said he spoke with, Baldino, and both of them said that we should sign the agreements as that each of us, each municipality should sign the.
separately?
Yes,
Okay.
I thought Meredith said she spoke to you about. Or maybe-
No,
maybe
not
she-
yet about
Oh,
this.
Okay,
Not yet about this.
so we have, no. Okay.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, as an attorney looking at this, have you guys gotten estimates? Like cost estimates or like, because it seems rather open-ended.
Well, that was my next thing.
Yeah.
Tracy had a list of like, yeah, thank you, that's what we're on my phone.
So we interviewed them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have no problem with the agreement, but that's how they said, that both our attorneys said that's how we should proceed, so we should sign them separately.
Separately as council person and mayor.
No, the two municipalities.
The two boards.
Yeah.
Separate agreements.
Yeah.
So they're gonna.
So wait. Are you saying that this has to be on the board's agenda and voted on? We never did that before.
No, we didn't. And that puts them in the same position, puts those individuals in the same position as you, as board of control members. So now you're representing the board of control. I'm not an attorney, but you're representing board of control. You sign for board of control, you sign representing the.
Well,
the
she was
community.
saying that the agreement shouldn't be with the board, that the attorney said the agreement shouldn't be with the board of control, they should be with the municipalities, because that's what the franchise agreements are with.
Bob didn't mention that to me.
All right, let me talk to Bob.
Okay. All right.
No, we didn't talk about it.
No, we didn't.
And I talked to him
about it.
today, so I'll
Okay.
call him, I'll call him tomorrow.
So, okay, so Tracy had these questions, and the only one that really I think wasn't, okay, so the first one is not admitted to the bar, that we were okay with.
Not admitted to the bar.
In New York.
To be honest,
The attorney.
Oh, he's not admitted to the bar in New York, but he is admitted to a bar somewhere.
I mean, Lawrence wants
I
to,
didn't just meet him in a bar.
He is on here.
he's going to be
She
admitted to
like
the
to know
bar, and other people in the firm are admitted to the New York State Bar, to clarify that.
Okay, yeah, no, for this type of agreement, that's, yeah.
Where we don't pay in advance, so I think.
Well,
right, it's-
but there's a term in here
Yeah.
that if we sign it as is, if we're considered a new client,
I'll cross that out.
cross that out. Okay.
Okay, we never did get to your question. We were hoping to get like a ballpark of what they thought and what was our daily rate.
And because, I mean, what I would recommend, and what I always recommend to my clients is you either put a cap in,
Yeah.
or you have an estimate in there, and if they're going to exceed that estimate, they need to come back to you, because you don't really want to leave it open-ended.
Yeah,
Why don't we add the cap?
Yeah.
You know, Just say it not to exceed $30,000 without approval by.
Yeah, and
Board of control.
that's the right ballpark anyway for this, I think.
yeah, I don't, I'm not never that hung up about,
Those were just.
yeah,
Jerry,
Things like
can you
that.
5 minutes.
maybe have Bob look at that?
Just, yeah.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And, right, so they had a clause in there that the files are only maintained for 5 years, but that's how long we keep, so we,
Well, we keep going.
longer, so it's, yeah, so,
As long as we have them. that's fine.
yeah.
So there's other fees in there though. just,
There were
you know,
fees for mileage, storage, et cetera.
all that stuff.
That's
I hate
reasonable.
that.
That's boilerplate. That's where they get you.
I know. And that the hourly rates increase annually, so even though they give you a cap, the
Yeah.
rates are gonna increase annually, so.
And so let's do this. Let's prove it contingent upon our ability to execute it. And with the changes that we've delineated about the cap. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's, I mean, it's fine. It's just,
That door's open. Anybody can walk in.
Well,
Dina had the baby?
Yeah,
That's
Yeah,
nice.
Summer Rose,
Yeah,
doing well. Birthday today, so it's the best birthday present. she could have.
okay.
Okay,
So, does that sound good?
okay.
Need a motion?
And so I make a motion, we approve this contract.
Contingent upon, you know, our ability, it has to go back to our boards. With the $30,000 cap not to be exceeded without coming back to us.
Okay.
I'll second. All in favor?
Um, I'm just wondering, I'm wondering if Abby making the
Hello?
point of it, I think it's, they might be, I think they need to represent because the reason why they need to represent the individual municipalities is because the franchise agreements are with the municipalities. And they're technically representing the village of Amerenik and the town of Amerenik, so you might just want to make that change,
Yeah.
that they're really representing the village and the town.
Okay, you know, let me call Bob in the morning
Okay.
and he can call Bill. And, you know,
They had
he didn't mention-
spoken to each other. Bill and Bob have, the way it was presented to me, they spoke to each other and they both said this is how it should be with the municipalities. And I
That
was
might
supposed
very
to
well
call
have
you
happened and
and I
Bob,
said-
Bob forgot to tell me. Or-
Yeah.
Just from a legal perspective, it
No,
makes
it's
more
fine.
sense that
Makes
way.
sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Which then led me to the question of then how do we pay them?
Right,
Because right now we have the money sitting with, you know, in that.
But yeah, it's.
But then I think when the bills come, the Board of
Yeah,
Control
Board of Control,
authorizes
yeah,
the
because
payment.
it's coming from the
Yeah.
chunk of money that the Board of
Okay.
Control owns,
Yeah,
that owns.
well, wait a minute,
Controls.
But
the bills we have to pay the bills in the municipalities that the bill is received in, so our bill will have to pay out of the town of Merrimack. We can't pay can't pay and use Board of Control money for a bill that the village of Merrimack gets, or the town of Merrimack gets,
Well, why don't we have them just
So-
bill it to the Board of Control?
because it's got to match the contract.
so if it matches the contracts, but what we could do then is just sort of have an agreement between the Board of Control and the municipalities. That the
Right.
municipalities would be reimbursed from the Board of Control for those,
Any third party can agree to pay the bill.
yeah.
I mean, we've been doing this, I mean, we've done, you know,
Right,
we've
but
entered into contracts before, we've entered into law agreements before.
Right, but the contracts have to match the bill, which it has in the past, because it's all been Board of Control.
Okay.
And it's a Board of Control account that uses the money to pay the bill. So we'll go through the financials, but one of the things we can do, there's a couple of ways we could do this. There's $100,000 in the budget, in the Board of Control budget. We could distribute a lump sum to us and to the village based on the percentages that we are at now, so that it's equal amongst the three municipalities, so that you have the money to pay it. or we can reimburse at, say, like, maybe at the end of the year, based on what's been incurred, because I have no idea what's gonna be incurred over the next 5 or 6 months. Because we are gonna have to figure out how to distribute the fund balance to the village, right, at some point, probably at the end of the year, right, because you're.
I think November
right?
8th or something
Okay,
is the
so
day.
we have to do that work.
Yeah, we gotta figure all that out.
So we can do one of two ways, or, so we have 100,000. If we think we're gonna spend 30, we can distribute the 30 to the municipalities proportionately. Or we can wait till the end of the year. It's probably, to me, the easiest way, but. And just lay out the money, if we can do that, and then I'll do a budget amendment for us, so.
So on our vote, it's town,
Town and village.
and is Sarah abstaining, or are you still
It's so confusing. I
still a
mean,
BOC member?
yes.
So like that day?
So I don't have any problem with it, but it's somewhat irrelevant to the
Yeah.
village of Larchmont, so it's, I mean,
So
6 of 1, half a dozen.
I don't know that it-
abstain, you're just not voting on it.
yeah, that probably makes the most sense.
You
if I-
you should probably abstain just.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're just not voting on it.
Yeah.
God forbid is a financial
Anything
problem.
that comes up, yeah. Okay,
God bless you.
$30,000 cap, and we need to know if it goes back to the respective boards. As far as Tracy's stuff, that she talked about, it's just internal stuff, right? Administrative stuff. It depends on how they want it.
Yes.
So in the contract, we need to change who the contract is with and to insert the cap. Is that two things we agree with?
And cross out the advance payment.
And
Cross out the advance.
Yeah, you only want to pay this way.
What I do, but the rates seem 235 to 850.
So let's circle the rate we like,
Yeah.
and I'll send it back that way.
Well, I think if
This one says, his current billing rate is 375.
which is reasonable.
Partners range from 250 to 595.
And just tell him if he has to bring in, this isn't, different than most agreements that I see.
Yeah, and I think you can say, if he's gonna bring in somebody that bills at a higher rate, get approval for that, if you wanted to add that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
On to the next item. Town Center capital project update.
Mark, do you want to
Oh,
run through this, or would you like me to run
Why
through it?
don't you do it?
Can I
I'll
get one? I
jump
didn't get
in.
one.
What am
Can I have one?
Here.
A big,
Oh, that. Yeah.
this is in order
Yeah.
as the agenda goes. And the last item, I didn't have it.
Go ahead.
So Mark and I met with Abby and Jane a few weeks ago, and we presented a new concept to the town, or to them, that we would like to present with everyone here.
We went to them first as a tenant, not as a representative of the Board of Control.
Sure.
Just to be clear.
Yes, they're built.
And, what we've realized is we'd like to try to scale this back as much as possible to minimize the disruption of the project, moving tenants, all of the moving parts that we understood this project would entail. So what we've essentially done is we've taken this, the only tenant that we would really move is the Larchmont Historical Society. And there is an office, a very narrow office that is next to the Rosenstrack and Beaver law firm. That's currently being used really to house files and copier a few other things. So the proposal here is to take that space over, take over Larchmont Historical Society, move them down the hall into a current space that is just being used for storage. Just for reference, Larchmont Historical is all the way at the end of the building, the left-hand side of your page, where the public edit station.
what is their current square footage? It's just not on the plan.
It's 175 plus the 130.
current historical society?
Yeah.
305.
You think it's a closet, right? Is it that room that have like racks and?
It's a pretty small space.
Racks, like racks that front just hanging. right?
Yeah, they have
Say, what's happened since I left?
a lot of old files and photos, things of that nature. But they were also using the storage room down the hall, which is to the right.
Oh, maybe that's what I'm
this.
thinking of.
That may be what you're thinking of. And again, the goal here is really to have a unified presence of LMC on that third floor. Everything through the glass corridor, which is a little bit to the left center of this page, that would be all LMC. We're not really doing a whole lot to the existing footprint as far as the offices we currently occupy. The plan down the hall, which is on page 2, takes the current LMC office that we're occupying and converts it into a community room, which has always been the goal and part of the majority of the reason why we fundraised last year during our virtual gala.
You know what a head end is?
That's correct. Yep, that's where the head end is right now. So what we would do is build a little wall of partition. So we'd soundproof that and then turn that into a community room that would be used, and it could be rented as well to the town or anyone else who would like to use it.
The chairs are only indicated.
Not a
It's
theater.
not set up as a theater.
Yeah.
It's set up a multi-use room.
Right.
I look for a while.
Yeah.
So the Larchmont Historical Society relocates here.
Correct. Right. So where Larchmont Historical Society is on page 2, that is currently
Similar
being used as a
space,
storage room right now for Southeast Consortium and Larchmont Historical Society. So Larchmont Historical Society would relocate to that particular room. We would remain in 311, which is to the left, keep our playback servers there, build a partition, and it would serve as both screening room, educational facility, for STEM and then those types of things, art installations or meetings if the town needed extra space. Back to page 1. We broke this up so that essentially you have production on the south side of the page where the existing studio is. The plan is to expand the podcasting, which is very popular these days, with an engineering booth, have the green room, maker space, sound lock, and storage. And then across the hall is essentially all the LMC staff offices. And to the left is the public edit suite. This would also call for the addition of a bathroom that could be used. And you'll notice that the bathroom is actually it's really a public bathroom because it's on the other side of that partition. So it could be used, for tenants.
It's a game for the town center.
And a new bathroom?
Yeah.
Because now you gotta go all the way down the hall. right?
Yeah. Reception area waiting would be added. And a small kitchenette, multi-purpose room, and an expansion of the equipment room as we have it right now. So we feel that this is, one way of while we're waiting for the SAM grant to come through, and I'm sure it will, we could potentially move forward with this project, and as that grant comes in, that could be applied to the
Community room. That's the idea here. That the grant would go for the room down the hall. So we would separate them as 2 separate jobs. And we have an architect and Calgy, who was recommended to us from the town
Yeah.
as a cost estimator. And we're asking them to do estimates on each space separately as well as a total package so that we know how resources are going to be needed. One other thing to point out, we have abandoned the idea of having a presence in the elevator, which I know was some concern about by the town center. So we've eliminated that, which seemed to be an issue.
The town is suffering a space crunch, so that didn't exist when you guys first moved in. So that's why every nook and cranny, like I can't even say you're getting this closet or that closet. So that's why I think when we met, we were really focusing on the rate, just so you were talking about the existing space.
Yeah,
Sure.
Yeah. touch the footprint and approach on any offices for the town.
We're presenting this today because we know that one of the biggest concerns is the cost. The only way we're going to get a real cost is to get a real estimate instead of having some, handy contractor come in and pull a number out of his rear pocket. So
Calvi wants to give it yes.
Calgi has given us a proposal, which is attached.
So does the kitchenette have a sink? Is that?
Yes.
To the bathroom?
And the architects have also given us a proposal for what work they'll have to do with the cost estimator in order for us to get the best possible estimate we can before we go any further. So altogether, 8,555 from Calgi, and we have 1,200 from the architect. So we're here to show you the plan. Hope you find it acceptable and that we might be able to at least look at moving forward finally, get a cost estimate. We're not asking for commitment beyond that, but it seems to me before we can have an intelligent conversation about whether we do this work, we need to know what it might cost.
Happy house to talk to.
Well, depends on who you ask.
The consensus is that in general,
No, I think we want to go ahead and get this cost, but there's, like I said, there's concern about the use of the space and the use of the grants for this, but. Things, didn't we recently have an issue like that? It was way off. We're way off. Like, I know we used them for years and years and years, and like recently.
There was another company we had a bid from. I think we just went with Calgi because Steve.
Steve had always used
Right.
them, and lately, yeah, the numbers.
Well, we can always go
Yeah.
get a second estimate if the numbers come in and they look silly.
Well, you don't know until you bid it out is the problem.
Of course not, right.
It looks.
There's very little hardcore construction in this plan. There are no big walls coming down. There's no structural support. It's very, very simple. It's almost just like an interior
You may
redesign.
not want to say that, because when you get the estimate, then we're gonna say, there's no construction, why is this costing us $1
Oh,
million?
it will cost a lot of money. I'm not saying it won't cost a lot of money. What I'm saying is the likelihood of us running into unforeseen conditions is probably lower because we're not actually trying to
Okay.
deal with structure.
Plus, this was done recently, so we know what's in there.
Right,
It broke the walls before.
Yeah.
exactly.
Are these contracts with Calgi and Hay going to be with or control with the?
I would assume they would be.
Because if we have to use the grant, the money is going towards this from the grant is now in the town name.
county grant is what?
That it's in the town of Mamaroneck's name.
No, I
the
understand,
grant. Yeah, so.
Or is this coming out of the PEG money?
Okay.
This would pay.
Yeah,
That's-
this is capital money.
Yeah, no, I know. I just wanted to make sure that. that's what we're doing.
Yes.
So then it's gonna be in the Board of Controls name, these two grants? Okay.
Not great.
That's a
Contracts,
contract.
contracts.
You know, I-
I'm fine with, getting the issue of construction. You forwarded it up?
Yeah.
Carol, Sarah?
I think,
Sorry.
I think I need to talk to the village board before I kind of authorize the use of any pig funds. So we have a meeting on Monday. I'm happy to have a conversation.
So why don't you have that conversation?
Mhm.
And then if we have to, we can have a special meeting. And vote to authorize it or not authorize it. Okay, so what could call us on Tuesday?
No problem.
Talgee's doing the estimate and the architects are creating renderings.
Well, they've already done an initial plan, but you need the architects to work with the construction manager in order to answer all the questions they might have about constructability and materials and that.
And
sort
is
of thing.
this just for the first half or is this?
We want to get a price for the entire job. Then we're going to take
Split
that
it.
big number and say, this much is for that job and this much is for that job. And as I look at these plans, I can't believe that the community room could possibly be more than $500,000, which is the size of the grant. So there'll probably be savings by just using it for that part, savings to the town of Mamaroneck.
And why don't you want to use the grant for the first half?
Because this makes it simpler. Every time we brought up, can we move forward? We were told we can't do anything till you get news on the grant. So it seemed to me logical that if we can divide the job so that the grant is for a specific portion of the job, it would make it easier for the Board of Control to make a decision. Also, typically public grants have different reporting requirements than use of private funds, or at least in this case, use of Board of Control funds. So this, by having it as a discrete project, it's much easier, it's going to be much easier to report on to the grant issuing entity.
If it's, yes, if it's less than 500,000,
Yes,
then,
and
but then we.
it
have
will
to-
be.
Well,
What-
then we have
whatever-
to add both projects, like,
No, I don't know.
well, because if this one project is gonna be less than the amount of the grant,
Well, it won't be
you
that
don't
much
wanna leave
less.
money on the table. You wanna
We'll
use it
figure-
all.
we
I'm
can-
sure we
Believe me,
have
if
to
we
put
have
in
that
and-
problem, we'll
Well,
figure
it
it out. We will
This is a
independent,
big renovation for that room.
We have to wire, we have to
just
do.
wiring. Also, we're going to put in an equipment request. We will develop an equipment request to properly equip these new spaces, which we will fold into the estimate. That we're
We just have to
getting
make sure
from,
that the grant
DNR.
will cover
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I don't know exactly. I don't know if the grant's just construction.
all right, well, we'll figure that out.
It could even be used for chairs, carpentry work that's done.
Yeah. I mean, well,
Yeah, usually
Do
it's.
you have a copy of the grant yet?
I don't think I have a full copy. I don't even know if I have it with me. I don't think I do have it with me. But I will, I'll get it. I'll get it.
Yeah,
It'll be good for us to know.
Been hearing about
the
this grant now
information.
for 4 years. We've been hearing about this grant for 4 years.
You know, it's taken a long time.
Well, part of it's because it got transferred
Yeah,
from the village to, it was for the firehouse originally.
Construction and design. So far. So I don't think there's any.
Also, is the
Well,
grant of 500,000 though, is it based on a total project cost of $1 million? You know, like. sometimes
No, it's based on two separate projects. We know that.
You mean initially?
No, like the application,
Yeah.
what do we apply for?
It's one project for $500,000. Actually, it's 725. 500,000 for the grant and 225 out of our. Yeah. our
So
capital.
that's the like matching, is it, so it's.
I don't think it requires.
Why-
one.
It isn't, and once you get the grant,
No.
They don't
we
take
knew
it
was gonna be
back.
more than that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
once you get the grant, they don't take it back, number one. Number two, typically, equipment would be covered if it has a capital life of more than 7 years. So we have to look at the capital life of the equipment, and you could do a little research on whether they'll cover it or not. Certainly, permanently installed equipment might be different than used equipment. So.
Well, I guess once we get the estimate, then we'll have a better idea of what to,
Right,
you know. We have to let go all.
Just make sure they're, when they're estimating it, that it's being done, you know, like every 2 different times, that they're not counting in a
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Always adds.
Okay.
Financials.
Oh,
So, let's give you a quick snapshot of where we are at in terms of the budget. So I gave you the first two columns, 21 for comparison. Third column is the 22 budget that you all approved. And then the year-to-date actuals is as of June 30th. We have only received the first quarter's franchise fees, so I don't know what the second quarter is. So far we've collected 204,000, and we'll go over that in the next page. We did receive all the peg money so far, so 130,000 for the year is it.
Yep.
And we've only spent about 4,252 in equipment through the peg money. Yep, small stuff. And then the rest is the usual insurance. You'll see $15,000. It went up about 2.8%. Not bad. And then the administrative controllers fees, and then distributed to LMC so far 323. Still have 100,000 left in the budget for the legal counsel or contract negotiations, and 100,000 for distribution, which we'll have to figure out towards the end of the year. So the net results, you'll see down below. Also the column, the next column, I tried to project, what we're gonna look like at 22, because I know that we have, some distribution issues we have to talk about. But I think that the franchise fees, if they hold true for the next 3 quarters as they did last year, which I don't know if they will, I think they're gonna be.
we're not holding you to it,
Yeah, I know, but a
Tracy.
little lower. We'll come in at 775, pretty close to the budget of 782. So not too terrible, but and
But the
then-
first quarter was above budget.
yes, the first quarter was above budget. And let's see. So at the end of the year, we're looking at so this projected column I added. So you'll see in the distributions. What I did for this first run of the projection is I took the $100,000 that we're going to pay for this contract negotiations, or we estimated. I then extrapolated it so that Village of Larchmont gets their share, and then the town and the Village of Mamaroneck gets the $100,000 that was in the budget. So this is just to start out with. We just decided though that it's going to be about 30,000, but we'll see. So that's why you see the distribution anticipated at 229.92 instead of the 100,000. Projected. Yeah. So that's the $100,000 distributed for the legal expenses, and then about 20,000 more for the Village of Larchmont, so that we stay with the same 1980 census distribution rates, and it's equally so. Okay, now that may or may not happen. I just put it in as a run through for the first time around. So what that means is at the end of this, the PEG fund will be $1.4 million, and unrestricted will be about $21,000 left in the fund balances. This page is just the franchise fee history again. So it looks like Cablevision's going down. Verizon's going up slightly for the first quarter. It's minimal. So that's what that is. The next page is the pay balance. That's that usual running total that I've been giving you. So right now it's 1,535,000. The next page is a little different. I haven't seen this one yet. So this is where I try to just give you a snapshot of the percentages of the allocations that we are at now, right? 48, 34, and 17. And then the proposed allocations for the 2 municipalities when the Village of Larchmont is not with us. So that would be about 5841. Now, one thing we do have to discuss for us, for the other two towns is, it's based on the 1980 census population. We do not have subscriber numbers. We can redistribute this based on the 2020 census numbers, but historically, since inception, it's been the 1980 census. So, you know,
That's what's in the.
Well, that's, yeah.
no, what's in the agreement is the subscribers,
Well,
which
but-
we don't have.
But well, within the agreement between the community, it's the 1980 census.
The unwritten agreement.
No.
No, in the sharing agreement, it says,
Sharing.
Oh, the
Sharing
sharing
agreement.
agreement.
it's based on the 1980 census until you get subscriber
Driver
numbers, which we've
information.
never gotten.
Right.
Yeah,
Which we should be able to get, but
they won't give them to you unless you do a full audit.
that would go.
Going forward, we'll have to figure out.
Yeah,
We're going to 2020 census.
yeah, and I think we're gonna need a new sharing agreement then, right?
Yeah, well, that would be an IMA, but,
Yeah,
well, like even this, like, because are we splitting the legal bill 50/50, but
Right.
we're only getting 40% of the money.
right. So that's the reason why I wanted to discuss this, because the percentages will change, you know, based on whatever decision's made. If it's 1980, if it's 2020, if it's subscribers. So this is just a, you know, first run through. So I backed into the number of 129,992 so that the village of Mamaroneck and the town of Mamaroneck receive the 100,000 that's in the budget. And then the village gets a proportionate share of 17%. Right, so then the fund balance at 6/30/22 looks like this. Fund balance 250, 699, 493, and it's broken up into PEG and operations. Right now, it's a negative operations because the franchise fees haven't come in yet, and we've been paying LMCs, so to speak. Then at the end of 12/31, based on the current percentages, it looks like we'll have 248, 693, and 489 for a total of 1,431,000. We have to, you know, again, we gotta work on these, decide how we're gonna allocate everything, if we're going to change anything. But this is what it looks like now.
So there's no action.
No, I don't. It's just an update.
One item we added, Mayor, was the, to try to start the discussion of the transition process. But I didn't reprint the agendas.
My concern was, and again, as you know, what's been happening doesn't match what's written, and so there's no playbook to go by. But some of the things that I've been thinking of is, first of all, I don't know, have your attorneys told you otherwise, but it seems unlikely that you're gonna have an agreement by November.
No, I don't know that we're gonna have an agreement by November, but technically, it is, there's gonna be this funky transition period, because technically, our existing franchise agreement doesn't actually expire until March, right? Because you enter into the franchise agreement, then you have to submit it to some sort of New York State commission, and then once they approve it, the date on which they approve it, then that's your start date. So even though I think the intent of the original franchise agreements was to end December 22, they don't really end until March, because that was the approval date. And so I think one of the questions we have to ask the attorneys is, well, what happens if we negotiate a new one before the March expiration? Like, how does that work with the commission approval? Like, can you get it approved in advance with the start date the day after? Does it, once you just submit it, this one now supersedes the existing? Like, we're gonna have to figure that out, and what we do during that like transition period, or if like we enter into ours first before you guys are ready, then what happens? Like, there's just a lot of mechanics that we have to work through.
And again, we haven't even signed the agreement yet, but they gave us the impression that it's gonna take years, that especially with Verizon, they said had one attorney handling all theirs, and that they weren't getting back, they just weren't getting back.
They're
to
very
people.
slow to respond.
So I don't even, yeah, they just said, you and,
Yeah, so I don't, and again, like,
so I don't even know if it's gonna, but I mean, either way, it's just an issue. The other thing, have you guys been considering, originally it appears they were given one set of channels and we gave them two. And then again, I did not found any documentation on how they were given to.
yeah, there's nothing in the
Nothing.
file.
So are you getting your, or is your part of your negotiation to get your own channels?
So I think we just, the question that we have is about the transmission. Okay, it's too technical for me to try to explain. I think it's just, there's a connection question.
There's a head end connection.
Yeah, and so is it, yeah, I don't think our intent is to get new channels or to start from scratch at all. I mean, I think we just sort of need to figure out the mechanics of what we have, what we need, and do we need anything?
Or are you gonna have somebody come and give you an assessment of your needs?
Yeah, that's part of the process, because we definitely want to get PEG funding, and we'd ask Matt to give us some of their feedback as well, so that we have PEG funding in our agreements.
Well, so if the agreement between the three of us terminates November 8th, as you said, of 2022, and the franchise agreements terminate in March of 2023,
Technically, yeah.
so then I would suppose that we would then still be collecting your franchise fees
Yes,
I mean, that's what.
and the PEG, so I guess we just would, pay that out pro rata until the contract expires.
I think the contract stays, doesn't it just automatically
Just
stay in
continue.
place?
it'll just keep
until-
rolling. It doesn't actually
until-
terminate.
Right, until a new one is signed.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying we don't know
Yeah.
how long this period is.
No,
gonna
because
be.
technically, from the cable provider's perspective, if the contract, if they don't care, it doesn't terminate, it doesn't end, it just keeps on rolling. So if they're not interested in negotiating, it could just go on under the, I mean, it could be difficult for them, but
That's why they were saying generally we had a pretty good contract, and the fact that we get the PEG money every year, not like all of it up front, was to our advantage, because there was like some of these people weren't getting PEG money once it
Yeah.
phased out.
Signed 14th day of November 2007.
what was that?
This one was signed, this is Verizon's.
So the Verizon ends
Yes.
November and the Altice is.
Yeah,
Was that ours?
No, but I think
that's why I'm
both,
not sure where the March.
no, but I think both were submitted for approval, because it's not the contract date, it's the date on which it was approved by the state commission. Yeah, it's weird, yeah, like it's random, and so it's not exactly, it doesn't line up with what's in the agreement. 'cause
There
we-
should be a way of finding out when it was.
Yeah, yeah, I think we have the exact dates, I can see if I have those in the file.
I'll look too. Because if that's the case, we're gonna have to distribute to Village of Larchmont based on
1986.
census.
Yeah, until, yes,
We all get our own deal.
And they're gonna have to get the number of subscribers then, right?
Mhm.
For us.
Yeah, and I think at the point in time in which if we enter into our own deal, but you guys are still rolling on the existing deal, then I think it would just be like, it's up to the cable companies to make sure they do it right, but, we would get whatever our subscribers are, and then whatever you guys are getting it and allocate, they just wouldn't give our portion to you, because they would be remitting to us under our agreement, and they would just, have to deduct that from whatever.
So have you had any contact with any of the cable companies?
I think our attorneys have.
Who's your attorney?
Dan Cohen he has his own law firm, and he does, that's all they do, is all these cable franchise agreements. It's the Cohen, I don't think it's Cohen Law Firm, it's Cohen something or another. But anyway, so I think they requested, drafts of agreements to begin the negotiation, and to my knowledge, I don't think they've gotten anything yet.
Now, the one thing just to share with you, that our attorney said that all Verizon is requiring everybody in these contracts to sign, to include a clause that Verizon can withdraw with 6 months notice if they want to get out of the cable business.
And you're only signing 5 contracts.
Yeah, they're
Yeah,
pushing
they
for
said
that.
both of them
My understanding from our attorney is that you can negotiate, you push back on it, you don't accept the 6 month.
That they knew of
Outlaws.
one that Fishkill had signed in, they didn't know if they didn't know if anybody else had gotten that far with them, but,
Yeah, no, yeah, you
Yeah.
don't want to agree to that.
but they were saying that seemed like one that were like.
Especially Verizon wants to walk away from this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but they want to go to 5G and stream everything.
Exactly, yeah.
Which. But so where do you, I mean, like, I'm just kind of like, I don't. I mean, because it kind of seems like you're just gonna take your money and, like, are you still gonna be contributing to LMC, or like, how are they,
Yeah, we're having those conversations with LMC. We're trying to work through things first and then we'll. have
Because,
that
you know, I'm
discussion with
getting
LMC.
asked, well, are they expecting us to make up the difference, you know, and, you know, are you entitled, you know, if we're like going our separate ways, does it really mean you go your separate ways and figure out your own way, you know? Get the channels, I'm just trying to, like, I don't even know I just wanted to open the conversation. to
No,
see what
absolutely.
are all these things that we need to
Right,
think
so,
about?
and also,
instead of
if
Making
if the
assumptions.
contracts are running for years, so if they're just never renegotiated in good faith by the companies, and you're gonna be using then, you know, the facilities of LMCTV, a head end and all of that, you know, that can't be free.
No, exactly. Yeah.
But you're saying you're not gonna be as part of the board of control, just you and LMC are gonna make,
Your own
Have
deal.
our own relationship, yeah.
All righty, anything else? So, a motion to adjourn,
do you want to at least,
guess not.
look at any dates? Well, we're gonna have to have a follow-up meeting. Do we want to try to look at it any time that might work?
You know, I was thinking, we're allowed, if you, what are you shaking your head?
Majority, the quorum has to be in person.
Really? No, but the governor's executive order hasn't expired.
Well, that's what we're trying to figure out, which takes
I
priority.
think the
the-
16th, doesn't it expire on the
Yeah.
16th? We have like 4 more days.
Because Jane was asking that this morning, does the
No.
executive order take precedent over the law?
The executive order takes precedent over the law.
Okay, so then we could just do a Zoom and that's.
We just do a Zoom.
Yeah.
So what did you say, Megan? I'm sorry.
Hmm?
What did you-
19,
The 18th,
Okay, we're meeting
somewhere
tomorrow,
after the
so,
fact, yeah,
your Monday night or Tuesday night?
Monday. I have a meeting on the 19th, but I mean, it's like,
Well, this should, you know, this just should be
Yeah.
5 minutes.
the night, oh, no, wait. Free law meeting, but no, I don't. You don't know. Yeah, right, that's got nothing to do with money.
I have a fundraiser at 5:30, but I can just zoom in.
Zoom, I mean, I can do it, if that's any easier, that's easier or harder.
If we did it like 4:30, can you zoom in at 4:30?
Yeah. that's fine. Nobody knows what they're at work these days.
So 4:30 on July 19th.
Yeah, let's set up a Zoom meeting. No,
Mary, do you want me to set that?
I mean, this would just be just to vote, it's gonna be great, we're just quickly doing.
that'll be the only item on the agenda, okay?
Well, is it gonna be, well, we'll see. if we-
Well,
It's voting on the architect things.
The
and then-
architect and the council.
And by then we'll, yeah, and then we'll know if we have to vote on it separately with our boards by then.
For the other thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I got an appointment to talk to Sposino tomorrow.
Motion to adjourn.
So, I'll second the
I'm big
motion.
on that one.
All in favor?
All right.